Before I start this video, I would like to make a correction. In the video before this one, I stated that Yuriev's goal would be to destroy Udu. That was wrong. His goal was to ascend to the upper domain in order to free himself from the fear of Udu. That is all. We will now continue with the scheduled video. Chapter 5 Pied Piper. Between the years TC 4617 and TC 4656, many important characters are born. The most important being Eric Weber, who was born around TC 4617, although his records say that he was born in the year 4639, and Jan Sauer, born in TC 4637. The rest are Sharon Rosas in TC 4638, Lactus in TC 4642, although considering he's a Realian, it's more like he was created in TC 4642, and finally Melise Ortiz in TC 4644. In TC 4656, Sharon Rosas has a child named Joaquin Rosas to an unknown father, who later dies. Now we dive into the events of the first game chronologically in the Xenosaga series, Xenosaga Pied Piper. It was made a month after the second game came out and was a prequel to the first two games. It was also released only in phones in Japan, so in order for me to get information on this game, I had to read a fan-translated transcript of all of the cutscenes. I hate reading, so you're welcome. For this game, we will focus mainly on two characters, Eric Weber and Jan Sauer. As stated before, Eric was born in TC 4617 during a time when genetic enhancements and cloning, in other words designer children, run rampant. Eric himself was a designer child. Because of the genetic modification done to him, Eric and the other kids who were modified like him depended on a drug that stimulated their thyroid to control their metabolic rate in order to continue living. Another side effect that is specific to Eric is that he was born with a congenital brain disorder, which he controlled by constructing working memory inside of the UMN. This allowed him to access the UMN at any time without needing an encephalon dive unit. Because of this, he grew an intense affinity to the UMN and spent a lot of time there. This caused him to become addicted to the information he gained on the UMN, thus making him addicted to the UMN as a whole. So he was a UMN addict, a problem which was becoming more and more rampant around this time. Because of this, he started diving into the UMN more and more. The term diving into the UMN is used when someone uses the encephalon to directly access the UMN as a virtual reality world. Normally, people use a encephalon dive unit to go into the encephalon. However, as stated before, Eric did not need this. He became curious as to what lay at the center of the UMN, and what he found was Udu. Like I said in the previous video, because the UMN uses the Unus Mundus as a foundation, and the Unus Mundus is in the imaginary number domain, encountering Udu in the UMN is possible. This made Eric the second person to directly encounter Udu, and just like Yuriev, Eric became overwhelmed with fear, the fear of total annihilation and loneliness. At some point in time, Dmitri and Eric met and formed a deal. Dmitri would supply Eric with the drugs he needed to control his metabolism, and Eric would do Dmitri's bidding. Over time, Eric and Dmitri would become close allies, as they were the only ones who understood each other's fear that stemmed from Udu. Eric became known as a UMN terrorist using the pseudonym of Voyager. Because of how integrated to the UMN humans were at this point, Eric was able to commit mass murders in what is called mind hacks to almost everyone using the UMN. A mind hack is essentially mind controlling someone, and because he didn't need an encephalon dive unit in order to go into the UMN, he was basically untraceable. From what I could gather, because the game isn't very clear on this, Eric would act as both Voyager in the UMN and Eric in the real world at the same time. This possibly means that the working memory that he created in the UMN and his real world memory can work separately, and this working memory in the UMN is the part of his memory that is Voyager. Because of this, Voyager starts to become a type of second personality inside of Eric, one that he is slowly losing control over. Using this memory he created in the UMN, Eric is able to trap the wills of people he kills inside of his mind in a way that people he kills are not even aware that they died. They go on living in a perfect world Eric created for them in his mind, essentially giving Eric a taste of what it might be like to be God. Eric goes on to work for the Galaxy Federation Police Bureau as part of the 1875th Special Operations Command Detachment. Yeah, that's a mouthful. He worked under a man named Jan Sauer, the one mentioned before, the protagonist of Pied Piper. His team consisted of Jan himself as the commander, Eric as an operator meaning one of the people that monitored the team in the real world, as the rest of the team dive into the encephalon. Mikhail Ortman, who also works as an operator. Bugs, a cute childlike robot who works as support for the team while on missions and has a father-son-like relationship with Eric, as Eric is Bugs' caretaker. And finally, Melis Ortiz and Lactus, who go on missions with Jan. Lactus is an early model Realian made by Vector that specializes in collecting and analyzing data for the UMN. Unbeknownst to Jan or the rest of his team, however, Lactus was also installed with a program called Program Kanan, created by none other than Wilhelm. This program had the purpose of analyzing humans to find people with what Wilhelm called shining wills. These were people whose wills or consciousness were able to be turned into testaments. Testaments are imaginary number domain beings with immense power that serve Wilhelm. People who have shining wills may become testaments at the cost of casting aside their real number domain bodies. In other words, dying. However, only Wilhelm can make someone a testament. During Pied Piper, Eric, as Voyager, commits more crimes that Jan and the rest go on to investigate as they move closer to his own trail. This works in favor of Eric because he can try to lead them off his trail, and because he knows what the police are looking for, he can cover his own trail. During this point in time, while the Immigrant Fleet and Galaxy Federation was at peace, it was a tense and uneasy peace. The current patriarch, or leader, of the Immigrant Fleet and Ormus was Julius XVII, who was trying to form peace between the Immigrant Fleet and Galaxy Federation, and who believed that Abraxas should be shared between both entities. This made him very unpopular among his own people. Voyager's actions caused peace talks between the Immigrant Fleet and the Galaxy Federation to slow down and degrade to the point where they finally ceased when he and Sergius XIV, a cardinal of Ormus, conspired and succeeded in killing Julius the 17th. After this, Sergius XIV became the Patriarch of Ormus, and peace between the Immigrant Fleet and the Galaxy Federation would only continue to degrade from this point forward. During their investigation of Voyager, Jan and his team are forced to seek the help of an anti-UMN group called Veritas Liberabit Vos, or VLV for short, which translates to "the truth will set you free." This group was labeled a terrorist group because of their actions against the UMN. They believed that the UMN was a volatile and dangerous tool because its foundation, the Unus Mundus, is something humans don't even fully understand. They also believe that the UMN has caused more problems for humanity than it has solved, and because of this, it should be banned or at least heavily restricted. The game isn't clear how much time passes during Pied Piper, but one can speculate it was years, as during the events of the game, Jan meets Sharon Rosas in the hospital she worked at, meets her kid, Joaquin Rosas, and eventually marries her. They even go to a honeymoon and are shown during a normal day during Jan's first vacation after their marriage. During this day, Jan buys Joaquin a dog and tells him that they can build him a doghouse one day. The dog, however, is a Realian dog, but Joaquin doesn't seem to mind. He's just happy to have a dog. When Joaquin asks him what they should name the dog, Jan says that his name is Nexus 6. But that wasn't his name, that was just his model number. So Joaquin settles on Nex to make it sound like a real name. However, this marriage was doomed to be short-lived. After he realizes that the police are getting closer to Voyager, Dmitri decides to use his connections in the Galaxy Federation to have Jan and his team, save Lactus, arrested under false pretenses. Sort of. This includes Voyager. This, plus the fact that Dmitri stopped supplying Eric with his metabolism drug, made Eric realize that Dmitri was no longer on his side. Because of this, Eric decides to take one last dive into the UMN to try to call out to Udo to help him rise to the upper domain with him. He believed that he had formed a contract with Udo, and that the way that Udo will allow him to do this is by offering the blood of pure-blooded Abraxans. In doing this, he was prepared to let his physical body die, as it would do regardless without the drugs. Having had revealed the true identity of Voyager, Jan and his team pursue Eric and find his body in his bed. Knowing that he is in the UMN, they try to contact him by going inside of his mind using the encephalon. Yes, this is a thing that they can do. They dive into Eric's mind, and they find that Voyager's personality inside of Eric has started to take over completely, and soon the Eric they know will be completely gone. Before leaving them, Eric tells Melise that if he had met her before Dmitri, someone nice and caring like her, maybe he would have turned out differently, but it was too late for him now. Eric, or at this point Voyager, plans to attack a cathedral housing the Zohar during a large gathering of immigrant fleet followers. This included Sharon, Jan's wife, and her kid, as she was a pure-blooded Abraxan and was a follower of the immigrant fleet religion, not knowing its darker side. Voyager appears before the crowd of Abraxans, and the Zohar begins to glow as people begin to bleed from different parts of their bodies and eventually collapse. All of these people accepted their death from Voyager as he convinced them that he was sending them to the promised land, and all of these people's consciousness were being trapped in Voyager's mind. Although Jan arrived at the cathedral before Voyager got to Sharon and Joaquin, this only served in giving him the chance to see them die before his eyes. Seeing the pool of blood of his wife and adopted son, Jan jumped to battle with Voyager, and after a long battle, Voyager decides to end it by summoning Udo. But Udo doesn't respond. Behind him, a very calm and monotone voice speaks to him. It's Wilhelm. Suddenly, everything disappears except for Voyager and Wilhelm. Wilhelm tells him that Udo will not grant him what he wishes because Udo already has what he wants. Udo, as always, simply wanted to learn more through Eric's actions, and through his actions he learned that the concept of eternity is not indispensable, whatever that means. Honestly, I don't get this whole explanation, but long story short, Udo is not something you make deals or contracts with, and Voyager was not going to get anything out of Udo. Wilhelm then introduces himself as Voyager's new partner who can make him very happy. Voyager tries to act like he doesn't need help and is just fine roaming the UMN with his mind forever, since, as he made working memory inside the UMN, if his physical body dies, he can still live in the UMN. But Wilhelm, being the smart guy he is, points out that his failed contract with Dmitri and Udo says that he probably does care. Apparently, Eric possesses a shining will, and so Wilhelm's deal with Eric is that if he helps him achieve his goal, eternal recurrence, then he will turn Eric into a testament. This gives Eric everything he wants. He would be an imaginary number being that can enter and exit the UMN at will with immense power, and if he helps Wilhelm with his eternal recurrence plan, this means that technically he would never die. After giving it some thought, Voyager realizes that he doesn't really have a choice, and with this realization, Wilhelm simply says, "I'm so glad to have your cooperation." Voyager's white cloak turns black and he becomes the first testament of Wilhelm. The Black Testament. Wilhelm tells Voyager that he will leave it up to him to bring Jan to him, as Jan apparently also possesses a shining will. Voyager then returns to normal space and faces off against Jan and his team one more time in order to demonstrate his new power. When the battle ends, it's clear that Voyager now has the clear advantage. Voyager tells Jan that their time is coming to an end, but one should never answer the curtain call alone. Lactus tells him to stop talking, meaning he knows what Voyager is about to say, although Jan is a bit confused. You see, Voyager now knows what Wilhelm knows, or at least what Wilhelm wants him to know. And that means that he knows about the Kanan program inside of Lactus, made to search for people with shining wills. And he knows that Jan is one of those people. Voyager reaches out to Jan and gives him two choices: to take his hand, go to Wilhelm and become a testament like himself, or be killed by Voyager and have his consciousness become a part of him like the other people he has killed. He says that living forever in peace as a consciousness in his mind is almost like nirvana and he will be with his family again. But Jan sees what Voyager is doing. He's playing mind games with him, making false promises about peace much like he did to Sharon and Joaquin and all his other victims. Jan takes the only real choice he has, and not offered to him by Voyager. He takes his gun and puts it on his head. While Melis tries to stop him, Jan pulls the trigger and ends his life before Voyager can take his consciousness. After all the chaos Voyager caused, he disappeared from the net as he started doing Wilhelm's bidding. Eric was officially named as the killer known as Voyager, but because Eric's physical body is now dead, everybody believes that Voyager is gone for good. Melis was sent to rehabilitation on the grounds of extreme mental distress, and nobody believed their story. Lactus was sent back to Vector on the grounds of having a defect in his central nervous system, although Melis does not recall seeing anything wrong with Lactus the last time we saw him. Melis is still haunted by Jan's death, especially because she could do nothing to stop it. Jan's body was recovered and placed in a body bank, where Ziggurat Industries quickly recovered it for recycling, as anybody in the Galaxy Federation police was forced to sign into the Life Recycling Act. News of the activations of the Zohar had the whole star system interested in it, and brought public interest back to the Zohar after 4,500 years. The Federation saboteurs took it by force, removing it from Abraxas, and riots ensued. In response to this, Dmitri advised that the Federation impose a military sanction on the immigrant fleet. Sergius XIV, who is now the Patriarch of Ormus and the immigrant fleet, went on record blaming everything on the Federation, and the carefully constructed peace between the Federation and the immigrant fleet was now gone. Yuriev put his politics days behind him in order to found an institute that would study Udu. Abraxas was renamed Mictum after the star system it resided in, and was put under strict Galaxy Federation surveillance. Melis went on to adopt some of the ideas from the anti-UMN group VLV, like the idea that the UMN, despite its benefits, is nothing more than dead weight to the human race, and that finding truth inside it is like finding a needle in a haystack. Melis wanted to know the truth, and because of this, plus all the corruption and betrayal she witnessed during her mission on Abraxas, she decided to leave the Federation and join the VLV. 2 years after the events of Pied Piper during TC 4669, Melis had risen through the ranks of VLV and started her own anti-UMN organization called Scientia, which came to be the largest and strongest anti-UMN organization in the Federation. Jan Sauer is reborn under the Life Recycling Act as an entry called Ziggurat 8. Or if you're my girlfriend, goat man.